I'm Gene Kuleta, editor of the Latin America Advisor at the Inter-American Dialogue in Washington. Since taking office, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has tightened sanctions against some Latin American governments, including Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, affecting several industries. Marta Colomar Garcia, administrative managing partner of international law firm Diaz, has been closely examining the subject, and she joins us today from Miami. Thanks so much, Marta. I appreciate your joining us today.
Of course. Hi, Gene. My pleasure.
Terrific. Now, as we talk about U.S. sanctions toward Latin American countries under the Trump administration, could you tell me about which of the sanctions involving Latin America do you consider to have had the biggest effects, and why?
So there are several types of sanctions that, as everybody knows, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba are the ones that we'll hear the most. But they are different in the sense that Cuba is a countrywide sanctions program, while Venezuela and Nicaragua are not. And what the Trump administration has been doing is that it has been targeting specific industries, specific governmental entities and individuals, especially in Venezuela, and sanction them little by little and more as the time has been passing.
All right. And now, what do you expect the future of U.S. sanctions toward those countries to be if Trump is reelected in November?
I think that we will see many more sanctions. I think that this has been the tendency of the Trump administration. As you know, the Cuba sanctions have even been expanded so that now there are no money remittances to Cuba, which is pretty strong and bold move towards Cuba. So I expect this type of sanctions to continue.
All right. With regard to Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, other countries perhaps even?
Yes, I think the sanctions will continue. I find the Trump administration believes that these sanctions work. I'm sure that you will hear opinions of all kinds as to whether they do or they not, but the Trump administration has put a lot of effort in these sanctions, and I expect them to continue doing so.
Now, when you think about the countries involved with these sanctions and the industries that are involved, what do you think the effects of the sanctions have been over the years of the Trump administration?
If we talk about Venezuela, for example, the oil industry has been heavily impacted. The PDVSA, which is the national oil company of Venezuela, has been targeted specifically, not only in its activities, but even also in its securities, like PDVSA bonds that have been issued have also been sanctioned specifically. So the impact in the oil industry has been massive for Venezuela.
All right. I asked you what you think could happen if Trump is reelected. What do you think could happen with regard to U.S. sanctions toward Latin American countries if his challenger, former Vice President Joe Biden, is elected in November?
I think that we will see less sanctions. And I also think that maybe some of them will be withdrawn. We have the precedent of when President Obama was in power, and he was trying to open Cuba and the Cuba market. That has been completely it's been the opposite with the Trump administration. So with that precedent of the Obama administration, I believe that the Biden administration would continue those steps if he is elected.
All right, terrific. Well, that's about all the time we have today. Marta, thank you so much. I appreciate your expertise on the subject today.
Thank you so much.
Marta Colomar Garcia of law firm Diaz, joining us on the topic of U.S. sanctions toward Latin American countries. I'm Gene Kuleta, editor of the Latin America Advisor at the Inter-American Dialogue in Washington.